What's going on, guys? Corey from Yoda Expedition here, and in front of me I have the brand new snorkel from Airaid for the 5th gen 4Runner, so let's get it installed. So included in the kit, you're gonna have the snorkel itself and the scoop. We have a coupler that's going to be connecting from the snorkel to your air box. We have the bracket, which connects from the snorkel to your A-pillar on your truck. We have a gasket that's going to be going on the backside of the snorkel. All of your hardware. We have some clamps to clamp on the coupler. And then we have Loctite for all the hardware. Moving on to all the tools that we need to do the job, we have the instructions from Airaid, which has all of the templates inside that we're going to have to cut out and put on the fender. We have scissors to cut those out, a set of pliers, a deburring tool to deburr the hole from the hole saw. If you don't have one of these, just use some sandpaper or a file. We have an extension, a ratchet, a 10, 12, 13, and 14 millimeter socket, a pop rivet tool, a 4.5 inch hole saw bit. If you don't have one of these and you need to pick one up, it's going to be about 30 bucks. And then we have a automatic center punch to center punch all of the holes before we drill them. We have a countersink to clean up all of the holes we drill. And then we have a 1/8 drill bit, a 3/16 drill bit, a 1/2 inch drill bit, and then our drill. So we're under the hood. First thing we did was just disconnect the battery because we're going to be unplugging some sensors. So now we're going to go ahead and take out our intake. Now we have a TRD intake in here, but it should be the same as your OEM one. I guess we're going to find out, but we're going to disconnect our MAF sensor, take out our intake tube, and then we're going to take out the actual box for the intake so that we can get to the hole that goes to the inner fender. All right, so we got the whole intake assembly out. Now we can move over to the fender well, pull down the fender liner so that we can get access to underneath there. All right, so over here at the fender well, you're gonna have a bunch of 10 millimeter bolts to take out across the front here and some clips. We did do a viper cut on the front here, so we have probably less than what you'll have to take off. So I'm gonna go ahead and buzz all of those out, and then we can pull this down to get access inside. So behind these tabs where you pulled out some of the 10 millimeter bolts, you're gonna have these inserts which are threaded for your bolts. These have to be compressed and pulled out. Airaid does provide 4 of these, so in case you do break some, you can replace them. But in order to get the fender well down, you're gonna have to pull these out as well. So you're gonna have to reach up behind the fender well and compress these clips and pull them out. So I ended up removing the clips from here, these 3 positions on the inner fender, and then moving to the engine bay, I pulled one from right here, one down behind the wiring harness right here, another one right there, and then one in the back. And that made it a little bit easier to get this pulled down in order to get these 3 out, because these 3 here were the toughest. Also, I removed the one right here that connects behind your washer fluid tank. So at this point we have the intake out, we have all of the clips and bolts out so we can get access to behind the fender. Now we can start cutting out the templates, get all of that stuff laid out here on the fender, and start marking all of our holes so we can start drilling. All right, so we have the templates cut out. We have the one that's gonna be going on our A-pillar, and then we have 2 different templates for our front fender. We're gonna be taping those together on the flat edges, like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape these together, and then we could tape them onto the 4Runner. Airaid does a pretty good job of labeling the templates as far as where everything needs to go. So you're gonna be lining everything up with this body line here. another body line that you have here, the top of your fender flare, and then the edge of your fender. Once you have all of those things lined up nicely, we can tape this down, and then we can move on to the A-pillar. All right, so we have both templates laid out on the truck, and now we can take our center punch and we can center punch the center of all of the holes, and then we can start drilling them out. So this is the part where you start ruining your 4Runner. So now that we have all of the holes center punched, I'm gonna go ahead and pull off our template, and we're going to drill all the holes first with an 1/8 inch drill bit, and then go back over them and drill them out with the appropriate size that they require. So before you do the holes on your pillar, you want to finish the fender section here. Take the snorkel, place it onto your 4Runner, and make sure that the bracket here on the snorkel, these two holes, line up with where you have the template. If that looks good, you can go ahead and mark these and then drill those out. All right, so we got past the fun part of the install. Now we're gonna go ahead and start installing the studs on the back of the snorkel itself. So they include some Loctite. I'm gonna be using that on the studs so they can't back out. They do not specify where you're supposed to be using this Loctite, but I'm just using my own judgment, and I'm gonna be using it on this. These are just gonna be threaded in by hand, and there's gonna be a total of 6 studs that we're gonna be installing. So I put these studs on the backside of the snorkel. The instructions don't say how far you should thread them in, so I just assumed that you would thread them in by hand until they stopped. Well, doing that, you're not gonna have enough thread engagement to both put the rubber washer and the metal washer on the backside of the fender and get the nut started. So we're just gonna thread these studs in a few threads with the blue Loctite, and that should be fine. And then you should have enough thread engagement to get this all on the backside. But if you want to pick up some new studs to assure that you have no problems with installation, we have some 2-inch long studs here. These are M8 by 125, and then they also have the Allen head in the front, so you can easily install them. And then this length will allow you to bottom them out in the snorkel itself, and then also have plenty of length inside the fender to get all of the washers and nylock on there. So if you want to pick up a set of these studs, I'll put the link down below so you can grab these and make your install a little bit easier. All right, so now that I have those 6 studs threaded in, I'm going to be applying the padding to the backside of the snorkel, and this is just going to be a nice little insulator between the snorkel and the paint on your fender. So I'm going to clean this down to make sure that it's going to stick as best as possible. So I have some alcohol here. I'm going to wipe it down and then stick it to the backside. Before we go ahead and install the snorkel onto the fender, I'm going to take some paint and a small brush and just go over all of the open edges and coat them so they don't rust. So when you're putting this on, you're going to have the flat bottom. It's going to be facing down, and then you can see these two other ones here on an angle facing up. Those are going to be going up. All right, so slight problem when we went to go do the install. We put the rivets in for the bracket up here, and once we got the rivets installed, the bracket was still kind of loose. So we ended up trying different rivets. We don't think it's gonna really work. Don't know if it's a rivet issue or what, but we have a riv nut gun laying around, so we ended up putting in some riv nuts, and we're gonna be using an M5 bolt instead of pop rivets instead. All right, so we have our upper bracket bolted on and tight. We double checked all the alignment and made sure that everything lined up right before we tighten this down. Now we can take the snorkel, put it on the fender, and then we are going to tighten the bracket to the snorkel, and then we're gonna tighten down all of the nuts on the inside of the fender, tightening down the snorkel to the fender. So on the inside of the fender, we have the stud sticking through from the snorkel. So what we're gonna be doing is putting on one of the rubber washers, then one of the metal washers, and then one of the nylock nuts. So I'm gonna get all of those started and tighten those down.
Is it hard to reach cord?
All right, so we have all of the nuts started on the backside of the snorkel. So now we can go ahead and tighten all those down. You're gonna need a 13 millimeter, either a ratchet and a socket or a wrench. And then you're gonna tighten those down until you see the gasket on the backside of your snorkel start to squish against your fender. That should be tight enough. And then once we have those tight, I'm gonna go back up to our bracket here and then tighten those down the rest of the way. All right, so we're at the point we are ready to install the coupler onto the airbox. So in front of me, I have two different airboxes, the TRD one and the OEM one. So we have a TRD one on our 4Runner, so the install is just gonna be a little bit different. If you do have an OEM one, everything's gonna be exactly the same, except this piece here on your airbox, you're gonna have to pop that off. And then looking at the coupler, you can see there is a slot inside here. You're gonna be lining that up with this plastic piece on the top of your airbox. So when it comes to installing it on the TRD one, we're gonna do the same orientation. We're gonna be putting that slot at the top, and everything should fit the same. And then if you're not using either one of these airboxes and you're using the one from Airaid, there's a couple extra steps that you need to take, which are in their instructions. All right, so now we're ready to install our coupler onto our snorkel. First, let's take a look at the clamps that we have here. So the kit comes with two larger clamps. One's gonna be going on the larger side of your coupler, which is going to be connecting it to the airbox. The other large clamp is going to be for the bottom side of your air scoop. And then the smaller one is gonna be on the side that connects to the snorkel itself. All right, so I'm gonna take the coupler, I'm gonna slip it through the hole inside the engine bay here into the fender well, and then I'm going to slip my clamp onto there and get it seated onto the snorkel. So a little tip on the clamp for the coupler on the intake side, put it so that the bolt head is facing forward and up. That way when you're going to tighten this down, you don't have to get down behind the intake box itself. Be a little bit easier. All right, so we have both sides of our coupler tight. We have our airbox back in the engine bay. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the rest of our intake, get all that tightened down, and then we can reinstall our fender liner and then we're pretty much finished. All right, so we got the Airaid Snorkel fully installed, and it looks really great on the 4Runner. I love the design. It looks better than most snorkels on the market. Installation, we had a couple of different problems, but hopefully if you guys watched our install video, it goes smoothly for you. If you're interested in this Airaid Snorkel, it's available on yodaexpedition.com. I'll put our link down in the description. So if you have any questions on this install, make sure to comment below. We'd be glad to answer. If this video did help you, give it a like, and if you aren't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It'll help us out a lot. So remember, your expedition is on the horizon, and we are here to help you get there. See you guys on the next one.